welcome back to another episode of Greenlight. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Jennifer Edwards, the Director of Marketing Communications at Landis+Gyr, and we have another exciting topic for you with another special guest. So as we started the conversation in our first episode with Prasanna, we did talk about how COVID-19 was impacting the utility industry. And one of the things that it brought to the forefront was really the importance of grid modernization. And I know that many of you are somewhere on your grid modernization journey, but what we found is that those of us that were further along in the journey, we're better prepared for essentially remote grid management. So we're going to talk to you about grid modernization and how we can support you in those efforts. And to do that, we're bringing Jay Lasseter to the table. Jay is our head of marketing and sales, and you heard that correctly, because he just recently accepted an expanded role leading all of sales and marketing for Landis+Gyr. So we are glad to have Jay with us here and a part of the marketing team. Hi, Jay. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's good to see you in our new kind of virtual world here. So you holding up okay?
We're doing great. As you know, we're adding another baby to the mix in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've got three at home as well. So still adjusting to that life. But I was telling somebody the other day, as you know, I'm a consultant by background, and I've spent my entire working career, about 25 years, traveling. So I have enjoyed having 3 months in a row in the same time zone, first time in probably 25 years. So I'm okay with it.
So no jet lag going on at the moment.
No jet lag going on. The stray, hair dryer, or dog barking in the background, but short of that, we're doing good. So
yeah, that could entirely happen in our household too. So there may be a screaming toddler that walks through this. We'll just have to see.
Play it by ear. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, and we're so glad to have you. And I know we have another big topic that we're going to unpack in little pieces. So, talking about grid modernization. So I want to start with an easy one. What does that mean to you, and how can Landis+Gyr help our utility customers in their grid modernization efforts?
Sure. Yeah. Well, great question. And grid mod is one of these kind of broad terms that it's important to unpack a little bit and have a position on. Look, I think at its highest level, it's about getting people out of the field, okay, and really being able to automate what's happening on the grid today. My background is in field automation, but really it was about automating operations and people in the field. And I think today what we're looking at is really automating those devices where you don't have to be in the field to understand what's going on in the field or operate and do activities that are happening in the field. So at the highest level, I think that's really what grid mod's about. It's really being driven because of all the changes to the grid, right? Because as end consumers, what we're doing to the grid with our electric vehicles, our PV, et cetera, and utilities are really forced to keep up with that and continue to invest and change the way the grid looks to kind of meet those changing needs.
When you say automation, can you give us an example?
I think when we look at grid mod, at least in the context of Landis+Gyr, probably everyone thinks of AMI, okay? And how these sensors that we're putting out in the grid really help us from a measurement perspective understand what's happening in real time out on the network, right? And we see this as baseline functionality to do any kind of modernization on the grid, what's happening in real time. And because there are so many of these meters, we have incredible sensor network that we can draw from, not just for meter to bill activities, but really operational information, okay? And with that, it really opens up a lot of doors to understand what's happening. Look, one of the things, we're talking about COVID here and how it's changed our lives at home, right? And maybe how we're, worried about the dog or blow dryers or, et cetera. But from a utility perspective, one of the things they're dealing with, because we're all at home, there's been a big load shift, okay? And the typical model of how they model electricity and its consumption has changed. You can model that and get a good sense of what you think it's going to look like, or you can use real-time information and know. Okay, and that's really, I think, in large part what Landis+Gyr brings to the table is that baseline of sensors that allows so many different options that just previously weren't an option for utilities.
Yeah, I think those are great examples, and even some things that you didn't like. I didn't really think about until somebody educated me as well. That shift in load when you have everyone going into an office and all of these commercial enterprises up and running on a regular basis, and then all of a sudden that just stops and everybody shifts to their house.
It's crazy, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And when you set up a field hospital, somebody has to make that happen.
Well, the utilities probably aren't getting enough credit, right? I mean, I've heard you talk about this before. We talk a lot about first responders, but the thing with utilities is they're only in the news if something goes wrong, right? Everyone assumes that we're going to just have electricity, and if some kind of temporary facilities put up, that it'll be easy to get power to it. None of this stuff is trivial, right? And I think the utility space in general, you do a great job of kind of hiding the vagaries of what happens. But look, it's a little bit easier on the ones that have already got some automation. They're still doing a great job. Okay, we're not going to take anything away from what they're doing, but what we're trying to do in interacting with these companies is make it a little bit easier on them. Okay, give them information that can help them do their job. Again, they've been, masterful at kind of keeping the grid up, dealing with changes, but again, trying to make it just a little bit easier on them as they move forward.
Yep, no, totally agree. Yeah, we have talked about them being the hidden heroes, of this. Everyone's quick to think about the very visible frontline workers, but somebody still has to keep our utilities on and keep the power coming. So those are also heroes and frontline workers as well. So those are our utility customers. So very good point. When you talk to customers now, I know there's still a lot of customer activity at the moment, and even with people progressing some of their efforts faster now that they've experienced this. Are you hearing them talk about the long-term impacts of the current climate? Will there be lasting impacts from COVID-19?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, there are still a lot of questions, Jen, right, about what the future looks like. But what we're hearing really across the U.S., East Coast to West Coast, is a continued and maybe even a renewal around automation projects. Now, most folks have done some type of automation out there, but a couple quick examples. We have some customers that are doing drive-by at the moment. Okay, and you have people in the field, right, driving around doing this, and they're really getting a lot more proactive, okay, about replacing that and taking it even a step further and getting more people out of the field. It's a safety issue, okay? Not only is there this data and kind of quality of information to help utilities operate their business more effectively, but they have to protect their folks. I mean, safety is obviously, always has been, always will be a big theme in this space. Now it's coming at us from kind of a different vector, okay? And we're trying to protect our people, not just from electrical assets, right, but really around what environmentally could happen to them in the field. So what we're seeing is folks that were planning these types of projects, right, effectively technology obsolescence projects where they need to move forward, are speeding those up, okay? And they have kind of a new reason why to do this, right? And so COVID has given a lot of cover for folks to move forward with initiatives, both in terms of, as I mentioned, technology obsolescence, but also in terms of day two things. So we have folks that are maybe fully deployed, they have an RF system, are doing great, but now all of a sudden some of this maybe voltage information that's coming off the system is a lot more interesting to them, right? So what can we do with that, and how can we further utilize it, as we move forward? So some great examples. We talked about load shifting. We're seeing a lot of load shifting studies that are happening, but continuing the automation theme of, hey, we have a baseline AMI, but I want to shift and use those assets to be able to do distribution automation, or maybe load control, or a in consumer program, and tons of activity planning around those today, as we move forward.
When we talk about all of that, are there specific solutions or new projects in the works that you want to highlight for this audience that can specifically help with these automation and sensing projects?
Yeah, certainly. We have a couple good ones. Well, first of all, look, we really try and take a very consultative approach to things in the marketplace, and really work with utilities on what's important to them. You mentioned your children earlier, and I have 3 daughters, Jen, as you know, and one of the messages I kind of talk to them about is, hey, no one's path is the same, right? I mean, it's about finding your path. And I think that's important as individuals, and I think it's important as business as well. And I feel the same way with utilities. There are several ways to meet your business objectives, okay? And we really try and work with utilities on what makes sense for them, okay, in their environment and their situation. But to answer your question, there are a couple great examples of kind of innovation that we brought to market soon, or things we're about to bring to market that are really popular and causing a lot of discussion in the marketplace. One being our network gateway, okay? So look, we've always had interoperability at the edge, where we could take our network card and put it in a variety of different devices. Well, now we're bringing that interoperability to the actual network level, okay? And we talk a lot about network flexibility, network options, and have brought a device to the marketplace that really allows for that flexibility. So it's modular. You can obviously start with RF. If there are other licensed technologies or evolutions of RF that you want to add to that device, we can do that. And it gives a lot of staying power to devices that are put in the field, as well as the flexibility. So that's a great example, something we're working with a lot of different utilities on. Maybe another quick example, we're talking about getting people out of the field. A lot of that happened through the reconnect and disconnect devices that we see in these meters. We used to send a service person out to do a disconnect or turn somebody back on, and now we're able to do that remotely. Just recently added to the 320 amp disconnect, industry leading, only one in the industry, just to further that portfolio and give more and more options to utilities to bring that kind of automation out to the field. And maybe last example, right? I'll give you a third one here, is our Revelo platform. So this isn't released yet, but something we're planning and talking about quite a bit. I'm super excited about it because it really brings together really 3 different platforms, right? One is our elite platform, or our grid metering, right? So really where there was a tie point, typically upstream, but now it's moving more to the premise, and pulling that into the Revelo platform with a very high sampling rate that's able to get both current and voltage, very powerful, again, in terms of a sensor and pulling information back, and really combining that with the strength of a traditional FCI or line sensor out in the marketplace, and a sense device, right? So really being able to do data disaggregation and giving an end consumer a good sense of what's happening in a real-time manner at their house. And if you look at those 3 products independently and what it would cost to install it, the Revelo platform is going to bring that for really a fraction of the cost, maybe 10 or 20%. So we see that as a game changer, and creating a lot of discussion and activity in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Those are all incredible examples that we are all very excited about. But you know what, when you talk through that, it also reminds me that, we don't go and do these things in a vacuum. We partner with our utility customers. We identify a unique need, like in the case of the 320 amp disconnect you mentioned was with TEP, right? And then
correct, yeah.
we are partnering with, utility customers to work on the Revelo platform. So we do these in partnership with our utility customers.
Well, we think that's very important, right? And look, we have a lot of ideas, a lot of brilliant people at Landis+Gyr. I'm surprised by it every day, some of the brilliance that comes out of these folks. But we also think it's really important that when you go to apply some of that, that you do it in kind of a real world example with a real customer, a real utility, and put this in place. And that's something we've done very well. I think the 320 amp disconnects are a great example. You mentioned Tucson. In Arizona in general, you can imagine, so the 320 service is a big service, okay? So it's a large home, maybe a small commercial, and there are a lot of them, right, in Arizona. A lot of people have multiple air conditioning units, okay? So that need, again, talking about their specific situation was really important to them, right? And if you went to a different part of the US or even different part of the world, it may not be as big of an issue. But it was super important in Arizona. And, Landis+Gyr has been so successful, done so much work, not only there, but in the Southwest in general, that it really made sense for us to work with Tucson and kind of bring this to market. So very, very proud of that product. And you mentioned Revelo too, right? So that's a new platform for us, yeah. Right? I mean, this is a very big deal. This isn't, a change to an existing platform. It's a new platform. And even in that case, really working with a strategic partner to help bring it to market, we think is very important. And we're excited about the folks we have lined up and interested in it.
Completely agree. So I know we just spent a good bit of time on hardware. So let's expand that. What else do we have that supports in the software and services side?
Yeah, well, great piece. I alluded to kind of day two applications, and I think I mentioned a little bit about distribution automation, which is a common kind of secondary step for somebody that's put in AMI. But the software side is very important as well. Both MDM, okay, or meter data management, helps capture and store kind of some of that raw sensor data that's coming off and make sense, right? The old IT axiom of how do we turn data into information, right? So that's a big piece of kind of what we're doing. And then we see a lot of activity around our analytics package as well. We talked a little bit about the load shift that's happened to the grid. We have a lot of people asking about leveraging our analytics package to study that, understand it, because not only has it changed, but there's a feeling that it's going to change back, but exactly when and how, okay, is the uncertainty around it. So putting in tools to be able to, again, understand what's happening out in the grid and react to it in kind of a meaningful way, is really important at the moment.
Let's say that somebody's on their grid mod journey and they're further on in their journey and they're ready to start managing that grid. How can we help them from a services standpoint too? I mean, we do more than just provide the tools and say, here you go, it's yours. We can help you with that.
Well, services are really important, and something that Landis+Gyr has a long history in providing. Okay, and not everyone uses those services. Okay, but it's nice to have that optionality. A lot of times, a utility can handle things on their own, and we're certainly fine with that. But we're seeing more and more ask for help. Okay, and really leverage the Landis+Gyr expertise to not only set up their systems, but to help them operate and maintain them kind of moving forward in longer term. And that optionality has been very important to us and something that's really growing. You asked about software too, so that's the other piece that's a tremendous trend in the industry, is on kind of SaaS or cloud-based services at the moment. And a lot of folks are subscribing to this software opposed to purchasing it. And we're seeing that trend heavily. It's a persistent trend. We expect it to continue. It was very common in kind of our cooperative space, what sometimes we'll refer to as public power, but we're seeing it trend across all sectors, really across the world, okay, in terms of moving to cloud-based and SaaS-based solutions.
There's a consistent theme in what you've been saying, and to me, what I'm hearing you say is, when we talk about this, it's no two journeys are the same, and there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So, for those, everyone's objectives are a little bit unique, and we can work with our customers to really tailor their solutions for them.
No, very much so. We really pride ourselves, on having that flexibility. And I think it's real important in the marketplace to be able to meet people halfway, if nothing else, and help them again find their path, right? So real excited about how successful we've been with that and been able to help folks on this journey.
Well, thank you so much for sharing so much information with us today. I'm going to ask just a couple more questions to close, and one of those will be, where can customers or interested parties find more information about everything that you just talked about?
Yeah, well, thank you, Jen. I mean, it's been great talking to you. And look, I think there are a couple ways to get more information. Obviously, the website. There's a lot of information out there to help get people started and kind of formulate their thoughts on maybe some things they're interested in. And then, of course, talking to Landis+Gyr, we have all utilities covered with an account rep throughout North America. So really encourage you to touch base with those. If you're not sure who to reach out to, I believe, Jen, and maybe you can expand on this, as part of this blog, we actually have a way for folks to be able to submit questions or maybe inquiries, right? So that may be the easiest way as folks are watching this, just to be able to pick up on that and make a request, reach out, and we'll get right back to you.
Absolutely. So right below this, you all should see a way to get in touch with us. That's what Jay mentioned, and we want to hear from you. So if you don't have a dedicated rep and you want more information, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will have someone from the team get in touch with you directly. One last question for you before we let you go. So what can people expect on the next episode? Because what we didn't tell people is this is really the first of a two-part series, and you're going to bring another guest to the table in the next episode.
Yeah, no, I'm real excited about the sequel to this first piece here. We're going to bring in Vicki Trees. I know a lot of people have probably met Vicki over the years. She's heading up our industry and regulatory practice, and we're going to speak a little bit with Vicki about how utilities are justifying projects and initiatives and moving forward, and kind of what's hot in that topic. And then I'm going to switch chairs with you, Jen. Okay, so I'm going to get to ask the question. So I'm kind of excited about that. And we'll have Vicki Trees here to follow up. Again, talking about how folks are moving forward as the world has changed and kind of justifying projects moving forward.
Yep, so excited to have Vicki. I'm even more excited for you to give me a break from interviewing, and you get to play the role of interviewer. So thank you so much for that, and it's always such a pleasure to see you. So thank you for joining us, Jay.
Hey, great seeing you. Thank you so much, Jen.
So thank you all for joining us here for another episode of Greenlight. We will be back, as you heard Jay say, in a few weeks with another episode featuring Jay and Vicki Trees, expanding this discussion on the regulatory and policy environment. So like you also heard, please use the form below if you want to stay in touch with us. You can also look for us on social media. So thank you all very much.